Shalom, shalom, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Tuesday night Torah study, hosted and guided by MTOI, as we, brothers and sisters, in the body, the bride of Messiah, come together to study the Word, and we will read the Torah portion for all those new and for all those returning. Welcome back. If you haven't already, feel free to set up your microphone if you intend on participating in a vocal manner at any point tonight. Always really wonderful when the contributions are more than text. The text art is great, of course, but as we both know, just the difference between texting somebody and hearing the voices of one another. So we will begin, as is custom here, as we have gathered together tonight for the first time in a couple days since the live stream, and first time in this format since the Torah study last week. So if you would have any prayers or praises that you would like to share with the group, be as detailed or as vague as you wish. We're using this, as I said before, as an opportunity to lift up prayers to the Father's feet and lift up praises, everything in His direction, as we would when the King is on the throne. And that's something we've discussed in our local fellowship here in Beth Yachad, to take it out of the abstract and to really imagine everything that we're doing, all the way down to Kiddush and Motzi, all the way to the prayers and the praises, to the set-apart times, the Moadim, that this is a kingdom, and we need to start getting in the mindset of that king on the throne. So we can imagine if we are entering into His set-apart court and lifting them up and laying them on His feet. Also a wonderful way to see how everyone's doing and how we can share one another's burdens and strengthen each other in Messiah. Janice, I see your prayer. Yes. Please pray my mind will call to remembrance all the information I need to pass tomorrow's exam. My mind is feeling like sludge. Yahweh is so wonderful. Amen. Good luck on the exam. Abba willing, your mind will call to remembrance all the information. Okay, let's see. We have some unspoken from Laura in Oregon and Laura in Ontario. Shalom, Laura. Both. Olivier and Janet Hoffman. Olivier still dealing with sciatica. Praise Yah. The last few days have been significantly better than they've been in months. Amen. Relief from pain. May Abba grant you that indeed. Alicia and Matthew Cooper, unspoken prayers. Unspoken from Lorraine Hasbrook. Rabbi Tom and Rebbetzin Joanne will not be at Torah study next Tuesday. Joanne's surgery is on that day. Please keep her in your prayers. Amen. Diane from Portland, Oregon. Prayers needed for a telephone interview tomorrow morning. A couple different interviews and exams happening. Always exciting to see what Abba has in plan for us and His will and His desire made present and live in our lives. Multiple unspokens from Rick Berry. Valentina Hoffman, unspoken please. Dale Hersey in Wagga Wagga, Australia. For general knowledge, the missing person was found 30 hours later but passed on, so prayers for the family for their grief. On the back of the general session, when I had to leave as a first responder, this was on Sunday, brought some closure to the family. Indeed, Abba, comfort them at this time. Prayer request from Dave and Alice Corey. Alice is having shoulder surgery on this Thursday, praying for a simple fix, no complications, and a quick recovery. Definitely can resonate with that. I had shoulder surgery back in 2016. So amen, no complications and a simple fix. Shoulder being one of the most complicated, limbs and joints in the entire body. So when it hurts, it hurts. So feel better, Alice. Beth Smith, praise my husband and I have had a breakthrough in our reconciliation. Awesome. Praise Yah. Prayer, our oldest daughter, 20 years old, is struggling with financial car issues. Okay. The boys are feeling well enough after surgery to eat food and argue with each other. That is from Selena as a praise. As my mom used to say, oh, you must be feeling better because you're acting like you again. Unspoken from Earl Lee in Lethbridge, Alberta. David and Amy, praise Yah, Dave was able to deal swiftly and effectively with a chimney fire in our kitchen wood stove today. Praise Yah for MTOI and this Torah study and all the newcomers. Amen. And all the newcomers, we hope you find your visit here a pleasant one, and all of the returning, quote, regulars, please make them feel at home and welcome them. And if you have any questions, newcomers, feel free to ask here, and we will do our best to answer it in a timely manner. Everyone is really fantastic at making others feel comfortable. Claudia in Florida, unspoken to me and my father's skin issues to clear up, please. Just seeing this, Tom, new laptop. Yeah, you can go ahead and do a mic check. Go right ahead.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Can you hear me? Excellent.
We can.
Yeah,
a little bit low.
I'll work on that. Okay.
That sounds much better. This is a great opportunity to explain the number code we use here. So sometimes when you see ones and you're wondering what that is, as we might ask various questions or do some kind of user polls over the course of the study. All right, let me scroll up. Mary Wallen, please pray for my mother, Darlene, who is in severe pain from her back, which has already had surgery. Praise Yahweh, it is not her hip, which has already been replaced. Indeed. There's a lot to deal with, so we hope your mother can have some relief. Jean, I am unequally yoked. Please pray for my husband who is unsaved and following feel-good religion. He is angry all the time. I try to remain silent. He is contemplating that we divorce as an answer. Yah's will be done. Amen. Stay strong, Jean. Definitely keep that in prayer. It is a very difficult situation to be in. Crystal McGee, Shalom. Praise to have been able to meet my mishpacha at Beth Yachad in person this past Shabbat. That's us. That was great to meet you in person, Crystal. It was great to have you. Prayers that somehow it works out that I'm able to attend Passover with mishpacha as well. Awesome. Fantastic. Truly a blessing here locally. Chris and Tiffany White, prayer for my doctor visit next week to go over my diabetes. Unspoken from Jonathan Thompson. Chris Robbins, please pray for my daughter Annette, who will be traveling to Liverpool, England. Amen. Safe travels, and may it be a blessed and just pleasant experience overall for her. Tom and Carmen Lasardo, prayers for our very good friend Deborah, having a job interview tomorrow. Annette in New Jersey, Shalom everyone. I am new to the Torah study. I ask for prayers for the Father to help me in this journey. I've been learning the word the wrong way for so long, and my eyes have been opened, but I still have a lot of learned traditions that I have to overcome and unlearn. Prayers are greatly needed on my new journey. Amen. We're all in this new journey. Welcome, Annette. We're all unlearning and learning simultaneously. Janice, praises for MTOI and our leadership and teachers. Steve and Gwen Waffle, prayers for financial matters, work for Steve and Gwen. prays for what he is given and not given in his will or in his testing. Amen. Craig Lane prays for all Abba is doing to serve the body through MTOI and why MTOI. For those wondering why MTOI is the youth program that MTOI supports and offers for education for the children, so they are raised in the way that they should go and stay in it. Walter and Rachel in Maryland asking for prayer for medical test results and a few unspoken. Red family, prayers for continued healing in the household. Praise for all the prayers and encouragement we received while we've been sick. Definitely been a couple weeks. Hope you feel better. Brian and Jamie, South Carolina, praise. Our daughter and her husband are in their new home as of last Sunday. Prayer, Brian's brother Chris is really feeling badly, having started chemo again. So prayers, please, for Chris to feel better and weather the chemo. That is a very heavy and tough experience in drugs, so definitely keep Chris in prayer. Craig Lane prays for a great interview today. Next, I interview with the owners. Amen. See, indeed, a lot of different interviews and opportunities. Wonderful to see favor bestowed, and on behalf of the Father to many of the brothers and sisters in the body. Kevin Shutt, prayers for a friend who was shot 2 days ago. Sorry to hear that, Kevin. Carrie Geffart, unspoken. David and Amy say, please pray for A and P and family. Hoffman family, praising Yah for the opportunity to host a Shabbat at home with the Houston MTOI family. Wonderful. May it go smoothly and a blessing. Okay, these are all the ones. Let's go down. Jonathan Thompson, praise Abba for job opportunity in the local unified school districts. Prayers unspoken. Sorry I missed this one. Fred Wilson, pray for my marriage. Dale Hersey, prayer that the school re-employ me for a future 12 months. Lana in Colorado, unspoken prayers, and my youngest son has a stomach bug. Please pray for quick healing and recovery. Thank you. Sam Davidson, prayers for my wife. She is having leg pain and cannot get into the doctor to see the doctor until April. Wow. Definitely keep her in prayer. May the leg pain be alleviated by our Father in heaven. Gary and Tanya Flint, MTOI Lakeview, Ohio. Prayer for my ability to manage my time better as I start school again. Shalom, brother. Sean Earls in Tacoma, Washington, up here in the northwest area. Prayers to get back to work. Had some job delays. Tom and Maria, Hollingshead in Pax River, Maryland. Praise to Abba. My son got in a car accident a couple days after he got his car registration and insurance up to date. Hope he is okay. Not too much residual pain from car accidents. They can definitely be painful for, days and weeks to come, just in the whiplash and everything. Lisa Hersey, prayer please for our children to have their eyes opened. Shalom, Dave and Lori in Ontario, another Canadian family. Lisa, prayers for the right immigration information as we move forward and provision. This is from Australia, so definitely a big move. John and Robin Barney, shalom. We need prayers for a friend who is trying to repair strained family ties. Prayers for our daughter for employment, and prayers for John for healing. Thank you. Amen. Kelly Ott, Appleton, Tennessee. Prayer request, my last day of employment was Friday. I am looking for a new job in Cleveland, Tennessee. Also prayer needed for healing of Dawid's foot. He is having pain. He does not want to slow him down during his shift. Jack and Jasan, Oxen Rider in Ohio, praising Yah for favor in our adoption journey. Rich and Lena Payne. Prayer for our 4 children to have a relationship with Yah and have their eyes, ears, and heart opened. Amen, as we will see tonight. Really all about a relationship. Okay, let's see, scroll down. Shalom from the Jacksons in Farmington, Connecticut. My mother's having surgery in the morning, just praying that all goes well. Thank you. Will do. We lift all of these praises and prayers in the Father's timing and His will and His desire in His hands. And greetings to Connecticut. I'm from New Haven originally. So great to see the CT in the chat box. Okay, does anybody else have any prayers or praises? And we will then continue in the study and lift everything that has been stated up to be decided in the best possible outcome, and that is our Father in heaven. I mean, I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago. Think of the expression, hope for the best. Well, that is truly in almost a colloquial way of saying Abba's will be done, because His will is the best. So we pray for the best, we hope for the best, and as our dear brother in New Zealand, Curtis Reed, says, Elohim, the great optimizer. So may He optimize all of these prayers and test us and crush us as needed so we continue to burn bright in the light of Messiah. We see a couple other ones here. Prayer for my sister-in-law. She has lupus. This is from Linda in West Palm Beach. Okay, we see a couple other people typing, so we'll wait. And then also, in addition to the prayers and praises, we will then also have a prayer, the same person praying, as we open up the study and go into the Word and ask to hear the words of the Ruach and not of mere flesh, and is guided in His way, and we may be brought together in that beautiful living waters. Okay, that looks like it's about it. So please ask one of the men in the room to raise their hand to open us up in prayer, to lift everything stated, and to start the study in our Father's presence.
Mic test. Okay. Avinu Malkeinu, Abba Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to come together as Mishpacha, to come before you and to read your word. Abba, in this, we just thank you and praise you for this awesome technology that allows us to do this and gather from all over the world. Abba, we just praise you and thank you, and we lift up all these prayer requests and needs, but also these praises that the great and wonderful things that you do for us. Abba, let us never forget the things that you've done, Abba, that should help us and strengthen our faith, to remember that you are the great and almighty, and Father, that you are only you are worthy or capable to handle our needs. And Father, we just ask you to look upon each one of these and handle them as you see fit. And Father, we just pray that you give us eyes to see and ears to hear this evening as we read your Torah and discuss it, and to bless David as he comes to lead this study. And we just give you all the praise, honor, and glory in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Gary. And indeed, those eyes to see from one day to the next. Okay, tonight we have, as we continue the journey in the book of Exodus, in the book of Shemot, and we are reaching quite a portion tonight, Exodus 19 and 20. And the parsha is Parshat Yitro. Those are the chapters we'll be covering. And so Yitro here is not necessarily a word with a specific meaning in terms of other Torah portions, but it does have a meaning. Yes, in all capitals, we have Steve Waffle, father-in-law of Moses. That is correct. It is the Hebrew word for Hebrew name Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. Yep, there we go, means Jethro. Thank you, Tom. There's also a root of the Hebrew word. If anyone has studied that out, I was just looking into that last night to prepare. Of the root of the word Yitro. Actually connected to abundance. And also the idea of adding. He added. So, take that for what it's worth. But I think there could be some imagery connected with that as well. Is excellency, yeah, that too. Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate that. You excelled. Is it not also a title and not a name? You're referring to Yitro? I see Raymond typing, and I see also Rabbi Tom's hand up, so I'll let them go ahead. Read. Okay. Rabbi Tom wants to read. Yitro is assigned about 5 to 7 names, titles in Scripture. Yeah, thank you, Raymond. Yeah, so Yitro might be referred to in various ways, in various titles, as we see. Throughout. Actually, I think we just read one of them last week in the Haftorah, if my memory serves me. Okay, well, that was a good start, and as we can see, and just the beauty of the scriptures is just with the name, there's so much we can even dive into and connect and dissect. And Raymond adds it, and it's not fruitful to force a hard European distinction into scripture between names and titles. In Hebrew, Shem is Shem. Amen. Yeah, definitely something, culturally, as Raymond put there, in the European distinction of, that you are something apart from what you do, and the titles being completely separate from the name, and as we can see from Scripture, that they are one and the same. They connect to one another. We see with the naming. We'll actually see this here in the first part of the Torah portion. The names representing, roles and personalities and actions. Of course, in the Hebraic mindset. So tonight we have 6 readers. It's a little bit shorter. We have Rabbi Tom with his hand raised. So if you'd like to raise your hand to read, go ahead and do that. We're going from 18:1 to 20:23. And what we will do is call up each reader with the traditional prayer, the Aliyah, meaning to go up. As we go up to read before our brothers and sisters. And so first up, oh wow, we have quite a number of hands. That's great, because in case of any audio issues, so keep your hand up there, even though we only need 6, because in case of any audio issues, it's always good to have a couple extra. You guys are just so Israelite, you automatically put up 12 hands. We just can't help it at this point. Okay, so first up we have Rabbi Tom. It's an honor to read the prayer over him and to have Zaken Tom start us off tonight. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen.
And Yitro, the priest of Midian, Moshe's father-in-law, heard of all that Elohim had done for Moshe and for Israel, his people, that Yahweh had brought Israel out of Mitzrayim. And Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, took Zipporah, the wife of Moshe, after he had sent her back, and her 2 sons, of whom the name of one was Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. And the name of the other was Eleazar, for he said, the Elohim of my father was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moshe in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of Elohim. And he had said to Moshe, I, your father-in-law, Yitro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons with her. And Moshe went out to meet his father-in-law, and bowed down and kissed him, and they asked each other about their welfare, and they went into the tent. And Moshe told his father-in-law all that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and to the Mizrahites for Israel's sake, and all the hardship that had come upon them on the way, and how Yahweh had delivered them. And Yitro rejoiced for all the good which Yahweh had done for Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Mizrahites. And Yitro said, Blessed be Yahweh, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Mizrahites, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Mizrahites. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all the mighty ones, indeed, in the matter in which they acted proudly above them. Then Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, brought an ascending offering and other slaughterings unto Elohim. And Aharon came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with the father-in-law of Moshe before Elohim. And it came to be on the next day that Moshe sat to rightly rule the people, and the people stood before Moshe from morning until evening.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Tom. Next up, just a friendly reminder and wonderfully demonstrated by Rabbi Tom, is once you read, go ahead and put your hand down. So next up in the queue is Bob. Is that correct? Will Bob be reading? Yes. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Bob, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Yes, that is chopping. But chopping and clapping at the same time. Okay, Bob, you'll take us verses 14 to 27 in chapter 18. That's to the end of the chapter.
Testing. And when the father-in-law of Moshe saw all that he did for the people, he said, What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit by yourself, and all the people stand before you from morning until evening? And Moshe said to his father-in-law, Because the people come to me to seek Elohim. And when they have a matter, they come to me, and I rightly rule between one and another, and make known the laws of Elohim and his Torah. And the father-in-law of Moshe said to him, What are you doing? What you are doing is not good. Both you and the people with you shall certainly wear yourselves out. For the matter is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it by yourself. Now listen to my voice. Let me counsel you and Elohim to be with you. Stand before Elohim for the people, and you shall bring the matters to Elohim. And you shall enlighten them concerning the laws and the Torah, and show them the way in which they should walk and work which they do. But you yourself seek out from all the people able men to fear Elohim, men of truth, hating unfair gain, and place these over them to be the rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And they shall rightly rule the people at all times. And it shall be that they bring every great matter to you, but they themselves rightly rule every small matter. So make it lighter for yourself, for they shall be bare with you. If you do this word, and Elohim shall command you, then you shall be able to stand. All this people also go to their place in peace. And Moshe listened to the voice of his father-in-law, and did as he said. And Moshe chose able men out of all Israel, and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And they rightly ruled the people at all times. The hard matters they brought to Moshe, but they rightly ruled every small matter themselves. And Moshe sent off his father-in-law, and he went away to his own land.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have Nolan as we go into the covenant at Sinai. Amen. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Nolan, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Nolan, without further ado, take us to verse 13 in chapter 19, verses 1 to 13. Nolan, you there? Going once, going twice. Nolan himself gave it too, so I guess we'll move on to Steve. Okay, we'll get that sorted out, Nolan, and we can definitely add you back into the mix. No worries. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Steve, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Steve, same thing, verses 1 to 13.
All right. Okay, I'm here. Excuse me. All right. In the third new moon, after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, on this day they came out of the wilderness of Sinai, for they sent out from Redim, and had come to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain, and Moshe went up to Israel. Let's see. Went up to Israel. You have seen what I do to Mitzrites, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now I diligently obey my voice. Now if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for the earth is mine, and you shall be mine, and a reign of priests and set apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel. When Moshe came and called the elders of the people, and set before them all the words which Yahweh had commanded him, And all the people answered together and said, all that Yahweh has spoken, we shall do. So Moshe brought back the words of the people to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Moshe, see, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, so that people hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. And Moshe reported the words of the people to Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, go to the people and set them apart today for tomorrow, and they shall wash their garments and shall be prepared by the third day. For on the third day Yahweh shall come down upon Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people, and you shall make a border for the people all around, saying, take heed to yourselves that you do not go up on the mountain, nor touch the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be certainly put to death. Not a hand is to touch it, but he shall certainly be stoned or shot with an arrow, whether man or beast, he shall not live. When Yabel sounds long, let them come near the mountain.
Amen. Amen. Now, just for fun, you would indulge me. Read 5 and 6 again, verses, and then let's just get a cascade of ones, all right? And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, says Yahweh, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel. And then in verse 8, all the people answered together and said, all that Yahweh has spoken, we shall do. Amen. That's cool. Thank you, Steve. Beautiful. Next up, we have Robert Anderson in Ohio to take us to the end of chapter 19. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Robert, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Robert, verses 14 to 25.
Mic check. And Moshe came down from the mountain to the people and set the people apart, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, be prepared by the third day. Do not come near a wife. And it came to be on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain. And a voice of a shofar was very strong, and all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was in smoke, all of it, because Yahweh descended upon it in fire. And the smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and all the mountain trembled exceedingly. And when a voice of the shofar sounded long and became very strong, Moshe spoke, and Elohim answered him by voice. And Yahweh came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain. Yahweh called Moshe to the top of the mountain, and Moshe went up. And Yahweh said to Moshe, go down and warn the people, lest they break through unto Yahweh to see, and many of them fall. And let the priests who come near Yahweh set themselves apart too, lest Yahweh break out against them. And Moshe said to Yahweh, the people are not able to come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, make a border around the mountain, and set it apart. And Yahweh said to him, Come, go down, and then come up, you and Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to Yahweh, lest he break out against them. And Moshe went down to the people and spoke to them.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Robert. Next up for our readers this evening is Brother Chuck. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Chuck, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Chuck, we'll take us first 12 verses in chapter 20 as we begin the 10 words.
And Elohim spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children, to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving commitment to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commands. You do not bring the name of Yahweh, your Elohim, to naught, for Yahweh does not leave the one unpunished who brings his name to naught. Remember the Sabbath day, to set it apart. 6 days you labor, and shall do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. You do not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart. Respect your father and your mother, so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Chuck. And our last reader for the evening for Parashat Yitro be Kendall. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Kendall, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Kendall. It will be verses 13 to 23. So just 3 verses short of the whole chapter.
Mic check. You do not murder, you do not commit adultery, you do not steal, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor, you do not covet your neighbor's house, you do not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. And all the people saw the thunders and the lightning flashes, the voice of the shofar, and the mountain smoking. And the people saw it, and they trembled and stood at a distance, and said to Moshe, You speak with us, and we hear, but let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die. And Moshe said to the people, Do not fear, for Elohim has come to prove you, and in order that his fear be before you, so that you do not sin. So the people stood at a distance, but Moshe drew near the thick darkness where Elohim was. And Yahweh said to Moshe, Say this to the children of Israel, You yourselves have seen that I have spoken to you from the heavens. You do not make besides me mighty ones of silver, and you do not make mighty ones of gold for yourselves.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Kendall. And thank you to all the readers and all the listeners. Together we bring the word to life, and then the word brings us to life. Say the traditional closing prayer. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah noten Yeshua. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah, giver of Yeshua, the Torah made flesh. Amen. Amen. Awesome. That was wonderful. Thank you, guys. Such a powerful portion. Shamash Robert, I hand over the mic to you for any announcements, updates, calendar, etc. before we get into the Midrash. So take it away. Oh yeah, so I think that is my mistake. We can read the last three verses. I think I pulled it from a different list, or on the previous Torah study we stopped at 3. So I see a couple hands. Is it to read or to comment? Raymond, go ahead. The last 3 verses, if you'd like. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why don't you finish it off? My mistake. Thank you for catching that. So yeah. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Raymond, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Raymond? 3 verses.
Coming through okay? Make a slaughter place of earth for me, and you shall slaughter on it your ascending offerings, and your peace offerings, your sheep and your cattle. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I shall come to you and bless you. And if you make me a slaughter place of stone, do not build it of cut stone, for if you use your chisel on it, you have profaned it. Nor do you go up by steps to my slaughter place, lest your nakedness be exposed on it.
Amen. Thank you, Raymond. And yes, it's a good point, Bob and Yvonne. The confusion sometimes happens because of the different numbering in the Hebrew Jewish Bible. So it is possible that from the previous Torah study that I was looking at to get ready, had it till 23. All good. Might as well read the traditional closing prayer again. Why not? Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. Okay, now we're officially done with the reading portion. And so you can just tell that we keep it very real here in the room, as if we were in a room, brothers and sisters. You know, this is not a production by any means. So you can see that we roll with it. We see our mistakes, small or big as they are, and say, thanks, fam. That's what we're here for. Okay, Shamash Robert sent me a note. No announcements. Okay, well, that leaves a solid hour to get into the Midrash. So as we begin, just to state, as we do almost every week, that we're going to, first of all, go chronologically, starting in chapter 18. I think this is good for organizational purposes, but also contextual purposes, because something that we have a question about in a chapter or two later might have been covered, or the foundation was laid before. So I think it is a very reasonable way to proceed. That being said, we're not going to stick in that, meaning that if there's a question that is related, we can definitely go there, but using the overall framework of chronologically speaking, and that, you know, we can look at the Torah portion from many lenses. And so, you know, of course, something that was brought to your mind, whether that's a personal relationship, whether you see, you know, Messiah in the portion, which of course we can. We see, you know, plan for salvation, you know, anything that can connect to other parts of the Word. Feel free to bring it to light, and we will go from there. So I see a hand raised.
Alrighty, I'll just try to always look at what we could do, or how what's there can apply to us today. And for me, I saw 18:9, how Yitro rejoiced for all which Yahweh had done. Even though there was hardships, he focused on the good. So the question I need to remember, and that even speaks loud for me right now, is how much do I focus on the good in the midst of the hardship? Like for me right now, there's work has kind of like disappeared. So it's kind of just this nice reminder for me to don't worry or relish in my misery of the hardship, but focus on all the good that Yahweh has done in the past for me. And I know that in time, he will once again refill my basket full of projects. Thank you.
Amen, Steve. Basket of projects, the basket of the bread of life. Awesome. And I think a good point there, too, is that Yitro is the father-in-law. So we know that he is, you know, in the, you know, family, of course, of Moshe, by being his father-in-law, but not directly in the camp of Israel, being a priest of Midian. And so we can see that his rejoicing, and I think this is an awesome connection to what you said as well, Steve, is how we can handle these times of adversity, how we can handle the testing and the trials, is a rejoicing for us specifically, individually, but also others can see that. And that Yitro himself rejoiced for all the good which Yahweh had done for Israel, because there's an aspect of the ways that we know that they are life, they are joy, they are love, they are peace. And in a world that we see now that is desperately lacking that, you know, we can be that light, and so others can rejoice, because it is something worth rejoicing in, even if they're not completely, you know, been revealed to the eyes and the open heart opened, and the expectation of our calling that it is. So thank you, Steve, for bringing that up, because we see how word travels fast, both good and bad. And Yitro had seen and heard as Moses was relating it to him. Crystal McGee, I like how in chapter 18 it emphasizes the dynamic of a proper family. Moshe fell down at his feet of his father-in-law, but he was able to do that because he knew that Yitro had his best at heart by giving Moshe such good advice about getting help. Amen. And again, connected to the fact that there are people, very wise, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's other colleagues of ours, that could have very, very, wise advice. Of course, we need to put it into the context of our walk and our faith. But I think what Crystal raises here is a great point, that in the proper family of Moses respecting, right, this is almost an echoing of the fifth commandment, respecting his father-in-law, to hear that. And so what I had in my notes here was that just because it's not, quote, Torah, doesn't mean it's not Torah. Meaning, just because Yitro wasn't saying something that was explicitly, the word of Elohim regurgitated, or something that he knew in his relationship with the Almighty, because it doesn't illuminate on that, doesn't mean it's not Torah in the sense of us respecting the father and the mother, us respecting husbands and wives, and doing something that is actually in the Creator's design, which leads to the Creator's ways, even if it's not explicitly being practiced by that very person. So great point, Crystal. Raymond says, love how much honor Moshe shows Yitro. Verse 7, and Moshe went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. And they asked about each other, about their welfare, and they went into the tent. The yes is not a divorce, Raymond says. That would have been a no-no. Yes, especially as we go into this beautiful picture of the marriage covenant. No. What we can glean from it is that she was staying there with the father-in-law. So not a divorce, but she was there, and then Moses went back to be rejoined. So yeah, thank you, Raymond, for that wonderful honor and respect to go out to the father-in-law, bowing down, kissing. And actually, something here I have in that verse 7, so thank you, Raymond, that the word for welfare, has anyone looked at the Hebrew, what the word for welfare in that verse is? And you can go do it now if you want, but I just thought it was pretty interesting. Give it a second or two. It says a lot about Moshe's humility. Amen. Give it another second or two. In verse 8, Chris Stewart, while we let people maybe ponder or look it up. Moshe did not just focus. All right, Raymond, you're staying silent. Did not focus on the hardship, but gave the recognition to the Father for getting him through it. He did not take credit for doing anything. Amen. There it is. Shalom. Thank you, Tommy and Selena. Yes. So here we see in verse 7 when it says that they asked each other about their welfare and went into the tent. They asked each other about their shalom, right? Their being, their well-being. So I think that's another, not like we didn't have enough definitions for shalom, which I always kind of in a comical way think of, if you ever need to learn anything about the Hebraic mindset, look at the word shalom. It simultaneously means hello and goodbye, and peace and well-being. So it's a beautiful image here that we have. They're asking each other about each other's shalom, and they're sharing in that. So definitely even the possible type to Galatians 6 and bearing one another's burdens. Just the fact that they come in together and they're spending that time together. And I think that's something that we know that at home with our families, right, with our spouse, we have date night. We have time set aside. Even at work, we have certain meetings that are built, or even certain functions to build relationships. So when we see a beautiful image here, just the fact that the respect first and foremost, we see that. Thank you, Raymond. And then just catching up, just asking each other about their welfare, and they go into the tent. It's beautiful. So they're asking each other about their shalom. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is how do we do that? How do we share our shalom with each other? How do we share our burdens? Because sometimes it's not even explicitly about Torah, but it is about Torah, meaning that we are modeling the Creator's design of shalom and fellowship, and strengthening one another's hearts, even if we're talking about something that is, not a specific verse. That's what I mean. Okay, a couple hands up. Rabbi Tom, go ahead, and Raymond.
Okay, thank you. Several comments have been made about Moshe's humility in bowing to his father-in-law. And although maybe spiritually speaking, Moshe was greater than his father-in-law, he showed true humility by doing that. But what impressed me was verse 24. And Moshe listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said. And that shows me that no matter how much we think we know or how much we may know or whatever, we have to be willing to listen to other people. And we can't have I can't see the forest for the trees situation. When we hear, we have to actually listen, and we have to be humble enough to consider their advice. Not everybody will give us good advice, but sometimes we can turn away good advice because we think that we know more than the person who's speaking, or we have a higher position than the other person who's speaking. That's what really impressed me about this. I just wanted to share that.
Amen. Very beautiful and important, as Raymond says, and something none of us do as well as we think. Thank you, Zach and Tom. Amen. Raymond, go ahead. Something to add or something new to introduce?
All right. Shalom. So there's this thing, and nobody's said it yet, but it does pop up every now and again. And even in some of the comments, I think I maybe detect little whiffs of it. But there's this idea in Christianity and in secular scholarship that Yitro was pagan. And I think a careful reading of the scripture throws that right out. And also an understanding of Hebrew idiom throws that right out. A lot of where people derive this from usually is where you get this phrase where Yitro says, "Now I know." Okay, go back up to it a bit. Let's see, I had scrolled down to look at what Zach and Tom was talking about because it was so great. Verse 11. Now I know that Yah is greater than all the mighty ones, indeed in the matter in which they acted proudly above them. Okay, so here's the problem with this. Okay, if you're going to interpret this as his sudden discovery that Yah is greater, then you need to go back to when Yah himself is beholding Abraham's character, and he says about Abraham's character, now I know. Okay, we already know that doesn't work. You have to, so just even on plain logic, just on plain logic, you can know that that's not what this idiom means. But it is well established that the Semitic idiom, now I know, is not talking necessarily about a sudden discovery of information. Okay, it's talking about a relationship with that piece of information becoming a present matter. In other words, okay, something has happened that has confirmed. Okay, something has happened that has confirmed. It's not necessarily a sudden discovery. And if you are open to that, then you can read the rest of the passage without that clouding it, and you see Yitro, for example, in the very next verse, is bringing an offering to Elohim, and it's respected. And Aharon and all the elders of Israel participate, and they eat together with him. It says before Elohim. That's very specific language. That is the language of they ate together the proceeds from the offering. They did a peace offering together. If Yitro was just a pagan, none of this would have proceeded the way that it's written. Okay, and so I just think it's very important that whenever possible, we do not put up with these, Christian mythologies that have crept in to people's doctrinal understanding that slander righteous men.
Amen. Thank you for clarifying that. I think that answered a couple of the questions that we had, I think, from Karen and from David and Amy. Amen. Scroll up. Let's see what else I had. We see again just commenting on Moshe's respect to the elders. Yitro was a wise man. Amen. Okay, let's see. Comment from Fred and Barb. Rabbi Steve delegates work to others where he feels they are capable, and so MTOI is growing. Hallelujah. Amen. We'll definitely get into that in a bit here as we finish chapter 18. Jack and Josanne, Rabbi Steve says not listening is a pride problem. Moshe had no pride. I mean, again, even on the kind of coattails of what Raymond was saying is what we said before, we have to be careful of creating broad strokes. But in this, situation, we can clearly see that Moshe's humility and respect towards his elders, which would have been an element of pride to prevent actual listening and actual wisdom, would have taken place. And he is called and deemed, the humblest of men. And so, yes, if he's not humble in this situation, well, it's going to lead to a fall, right? Pride comes before a fall, because you don't want to listen to your father-in-law who's giving you a necessary delegation structure, and you say no, and then, well, it's going to cause you more problems. Okay, see, Gary says, Torah for that insight. I've never been able to reconcile those things with the idea that he was a pagan priest. Amen. He's got a Torah portion named after him. Great clarification. Yeah, thank you, Raymond. Okay, not yet chapter 19. You can just keep your hand up there. Steve? So just a couple points here, and then we'll discuss Fred and Barb's comment, because I think that's really key. Just something that came to mind, just a note on this. I just thought it was beautiful, and it stuck out, just kind of where my heart has been. We have in verses 3 to 6, we have the naming of the sons. We have Gershom, right? I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. We can also even see the words Ger and Shem in there. Foreigner, stranger, and name. And then Eliezer, the Elohim of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. So as we know, names can be quite significant in the scriptures. And so a beautiful image here, which is just something that I was studying out. Again, it's not the definitive answer on anything. I'm never going to say that what I'm saying is a definitive answer by any means. But we can see two sons, possible type and shadow of two houses. Right? The Elohim of my father could refer to the house of Judah. And I've been a sojourner in a foreign land, being that of Ephraim coming back in. And then culminating in verse 6, which I think has some marriage covenant language, especially leading up to chapter 19, it says, I'm coming to you with your wife and her two sons with her. So if we can, I know this might be a stretch, but extrapolate that on us being the bride of Messiah, the bride composed of once two houses to reunite into one, two sons. I just thought that was neat. Let's see, Alana says, during Moshe's 20 years with Jethro and his family, he didn't know Yahweh, only pagan gods throughout his lifetime until the burning bush? Question mark? Talking about Moses, so asking if Moses during his time spent, he didn't know Yahweh, only pagan gods. Does anyone have Raymond, if you want to tackle that? Or I want to be more specific, what you're referring to. Is this connected to Yitro or just connected to Moses' journey?
Okay, so I would go ahead and make an opportunity for more specific information there if Alana wants to elaborate. But I believe where this impression comes from is the way Christians read chapter 3, the way a lot of people read chapter 3, and so that's a thing. Definitely understand that that's out there. But the best point, I think, I'm going to just cut right down to what probably Amy put in just now, and that is he would have learned from his mother. That's absolutely the truth. You think that how do I put this? To have the idea that Moshe would get breastfed by his mother and not be taught the most basic thing, unlikely. As Amy also points out, the age of weaning in the ancient world was quite a bit older than the impatient mothers of today tend to do. It seems that today even women who could breastfeed, longer than a couple of years, most of them don't. But in the ancient world, it was common to not wean until at least the age of 3 or 4. Okay. Modern society doesn't really give people a lot of ability to put up with that sort of thing, I suppose. So we have a lot to do to measure up to the character of people from a long time ago in every respect, and fathers, mothers, etc. None of us measure up, but we have this big difference. So when you think about weaning age, don't think like 1 or 2 years old, like people would today. He was definitely able to speak before he was weaned. Okay, so children, Jewish children, and back then Israelite children, learn about the eternal first from their mother, not their father. And it's the mother's job to instill these things at the beginning stages. And Moshe's mother would have been no exception. Chapter 3 doesn't tell us that Moshe didn't know, the eternal at all. He needs to be told his name. Okay, and that is not a crazy thing, all things considered. Since we know that the Jewish people to this day are very concerned about guarding the name, and they don't say it in just any and every circumstance. It's not outside the bounds of reason that perhaps Moshe's family was guarded about how they would use the name. But that speculation aside, there's no reason to believe that Moshe, who was, with his Levite mother for the first few years of his life, and spent a good deal of time shepherding the flock of Yitro, who was descended from Avraham, would not have known anything about the Elohim of his fathers. So you could say what happened in Exodus 3 is a crash course, and you could definitely say that Moshe is asking his name, but I'm going to open up a possibility here that I haven't really heard anybody talk about before. And it is possible that Moshe knew the name, but asked the question as a test. There's nothing in the text, necessarily that would have to rule that out. It's certainly simpler to read it as he's asking because he doesn't know. Okay, and I'll grant you that. But it's definitely not conclusive from the text that he's asking the specific name because he has no idea what entity he's talking to at all. I think that is a huge stretch. And so it's not anybody's fault for reading it that way. I know it's very common in Christianity and in the secular world to read it that way, but I think you find that in Hebrew circles, in Jewish circles, etc., it's not common to read it that way because of the additional information, the cultural information that is part and parcel of being part of those communities. It's the absence of that information that causes.
Thank you, Raymond. So yes, cultural information and lack of information straightforward in the text definitely leaves it the element of only knowing pagan gods from Moses definitely ruled out as what would happen based on everything that Raymond said. So thank you. Okay, so I know we got a couple hands up. Just want to finish chapter 18 and we can go on to 19. Just a couple points here. Verse 12. So we see, after the sharing and the welcoming and, the catching up, it's really what they're doing. Catching up on travels, just as like if you got back from a long trip, you would catch up. We see them eating bread here, and so something that reminded me of a specific verse in another book. See if anyone has it in mind. It's the verse about staying steadfast and breaking bread. That's what came to mind here. Anyone? Also related to another possible custom that we do weekly or daily. Hamotzi Kiddush, Hamotzi. Amen. And then the other verse I was thinking of was in the book of Acts, breaking bread. So we see this vital element to being in fellowship with one another. And Hamotzi is something that Beth Yachad has been spending some more time on as well. Is there's just the beautiful layers of Hamotzi and Kiddush in the words and their application. And we even see that in the book of Exodus that it says that, brings bread. This is the bread from the heavens. And then we also have an actual psalm, verse in Psalms that says, brings bread from the earth. And so we can even say that in Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right, brings forth bread from the earth, and Hamotzi lechem min hashamayim, brings bread from the heavens. With Hamotzi, the root there, and we focused on this a couple weeks ago when I was here with you last. He who brings forth. So coming out of Egypt, being brought out of our trespasses to eat the bread of life. So a possible connection there with the eating of the bread. And also just on a very Peshat level, eating bread, breaking bread, this is something that we have done and we do to get to know one another, to enjoy. There's really nothing like having a meal with one another as well. Okay, and so then just to go in, thank you for being patient, everyone, in hands, and I'm copying comments that I see in chapter 19. Just to cover the end of chapter 18, I just want to say that the previous studies on Yitro, if you go to the archive, cover this aspect in great detail, the aspect of the organizational structure and leadership. And so I'd highly recommend, if you want a more exhaustive study on that, to go back to the archives. Thank you, Candace. Acts 2:42, 46, they broke bread. So go ahead there. But like Fred and Barb brought up, the delegation is so important, right? The sharing of the burdens. That's what Yitro is saying. This is too heavy for you, right? You're not going to be able to carry this. This is too heavy. And not depending on one person. This is something that kind of came to mind. And, I think of this just in kind of my, work context, business context, is depending on one person, and this applies right here, is not good for both the leaders and the flock, right? So let's have a couple of answers. Why? We'll start with the leaders. Why is it not good to depend on one person? We'll see Moses here, right? He said, people stood before Moshe from morning until evening, right? The whole day. So why is it not good? We'll start with the leaders to depend on one person. Just put it in, various segments. I'll read them out. They get tired, the depletion. Wears out the leaders. Amen. Lack of accountability. Indeed, frustration. They grow tired, not able to have the time they need to connect vertically. Amen. Efficiency. Jamin brings a great point. Leaders also need family time. So I think leaders need to be human. Leaders need to be able to be human and also partake in the working out of their own individual salvation as well. Burnout, also, if something happens, there's no backup. Absolute power can corrupt. Less than excellent judgment at the end of the day. Amen. Definitely you can wear. Okay, that's some great ones. Now, on the other side, what could happen depending on what person for the flock? What are some possible detriments there? We see unable to give proper time and thought to decisions. Yep, this is the leaders. Others need to be trained up by the leader too. Yep. Not having needs met, loss of a shepherd, critical to timely fashion, critical of leadership, the people grow impatient, blessings and unity. Yes, leaders definitely need family time in order to bring up proper children. Not May and Terry. Overlooked when flock too large. Time for prayer. Impatient people try leaders. They can feel neglected. Exactly. So many. So we can see from both sides that we call this in kind of the, business entrepreneur world that I've spent some time in just in my work is a knowledge silo. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. Basically what happens in a company, or here, right? One person is responsible for so much and everything, and they know everything that, well, okay, if something happens, the bulb drops, they pick it up. If this breaks, they fix it. But the minute that person decides to leave the company or do something else, or, Abba forbid, something tragic, then the rest of the company is left because they didn't distribute the silo. So it may seem like an advantage at first, but it actually is a disadvantage. Avoid, exactly. And the crisis is multiplying in this environment as soon as this person is unavailable or overtaxed. Is not good, exactly. And so basically, on both sides, the person is taxed, like we can see, and thank you for all of your answers. And on the other side, it becomes, people could be frustrated, think somebody put there in a timely fashion. They want a right ruling, right? They want a judgment from Moshe, and they have to wait for something that might be critical, right? That needs to be taken care of in the next 30 minutes rather than the next 30 days, etc. And so I think this is a great example here on the importance of delegation, the importance of structure, organizational structure, exactly, Crystal. One person can only do so much. And that the delegation is vital, and that's what Fred and Barb were saying. The delegation is vital to be able to then take care, as it says here, right? The every great matter is brought to Moshe, but they themselves rightly rule every small matter. So they're trained up, and they're grown to a place where they can learn how to take care of it themselves. And I think something also, if we look at the structure, it all comes back to starting at the foundation of small groups, rulers of 10. And then, multiple groups of those 10, you have somebody overseeing the 50, and then overseeing the 100, right? So maybe how I'm reading, I could be wrong, is that you don't have somebody in charge of 1,000 people, because then it would just be a very similar situation of Moshe. Those 1,000 people trying to get a hold of them. But creating these intimate groups with overseeing, with, of course, proper servant leadership, as we can see in Ephesians 4 and the fivefold, overseeing that, so something can be taken care of quickly, if it needs to be. Think of it also like the various local courts all the way to a Supreme Court, right? First it goes through that, then it goes to another level, and if need be, it goes to the Supreme Court, right? But you don't take, your appellate court, district court case right away to the Supreme Court. It doesn't make any sense. So same thing with this. You have those small groups. It starts with the basis of 10. Okay, let me scroll up. So again, go ahead and listen to the previous ones. Definitely, a deeper dive there if you would like to, but just wanted to point that out, that I know we often talk about the detriment to the leader, right? But also the possible detriment to the flock, as you pointed out. Okay, let's see. Like a triage, Carrie says she goes to Gary and it feels like he can't answer. He sends me up the line. Amen. And Rick says relationships, exactly. So you need to have those relationships at these smaller levels to be able to know what's going on, to actually hear them and see what's going on with each other. Earl says, I delegate to my other me's all the time, sometimes not so good. Raymond, when the load gets to the point that your bandwidth is only enough to handle the critical, it's already too late, as you have no bandwidth left to train help. The crisis is coming. Amen. And I think that's something with the relationships comment that Rick pointed out is actually in the small day-to-day get-to-know-you relationships in a organized structure, that fabric can prevent the critical. So even though it might seem like just small talk, sometimes the small talk, you need that small talk. There's been so many studies in the world that talk about these importance of these kind of third degree. They also call it the third space. Besides your home, besides your work, what is the third space? What is this third degree of social interactions, right? It's not the big ones, like a spouse or children or family or your work, but what about the small ones, right? That still have rich nature in them, but aren't necessarily thought to be as critical. That actually can prevent the critical from people really being strung out or overtaxed. Okay? Crystal, thinking oneself can do everything without ever getting help has a pride issue. Gary said, every mom could probably understand this from a leadership standpoint. And David and Amy says, you got it. Hierarchy of leadership. Patience is not in our human nature. We want our issues dealt with immediately. Goes to show not loving our neighbor as ourselves. Mary says the military model, amen. And actually we see, we can look in Deuteronomy that it seems to read that the structure actually was not implemented until after Sinai, and it does make a lot of sense that, well, they're about to be used as the sword of Elohim, so of course a military model is going to be needed for that structure. A military model and also a relationship model to prevent things from building up and tension from growing because it can't be dealt with. Okay, a bunch of amens. Hoffman said, Rabbi Steve handles the greater matters very well and trains and delegates. System works very well. Thank you, MTOI, for all what you do. Amen. Okay. Also top down, yes. As in the leadership? Well, yes, we have, of course, the qualification and the raising up of the top down. We can see this when they were choosing the 12th apostle to they put it in Yah's hands, right? So we have the appointed ones. We see this in Deuteronomy 2, and here that Moses sets the authority over them. We also see in Deuteronomy something interesting that he asked them. He says, you choose the ones that you know of. So I think you also have a kind of bottom-up meeting, but that cannot go further unless that top is actually given that authority, right? Because you also possibly think in the context as well, as if you have a group that has a relationship and they know who that person is, right? They know who that servant leader is, who needs to be prepped up and put up, but then that can only happen when then the greater fivefold, the overseer of that, then confirms that. So I think to a certain degree, of course, we have the ultimate top, which is Yahweh and Yeshua, who is the master of the Kahal, master of the assembly, and no one else. But also that there's relationships on that more intimate fellowship level are able to then provide the right context, so then the fivefold on the kind of next flock leading level can confirm that. Elohim delegates their structure in the kingdom on earth as it is heaven, training for future kin. Amen. Leaders lead by example. The closer they are to those they're leading, the more effective and vulnerable the example. Exactly. Closer, not just proximity and location, but closer in relationship. I mean, you really get to know somebody. I mean, think about, your spouse or your children, or someone you're very close with. It gets to a point where you don't even have to ask them how they're doing. Because you can see their face, you can see their body language, you can see their behavior. That's a type of knowing a relationship, and then we'll get right into chapter 19. And Steve and Chuck deserve awards for their hands. Hopefully we won't have to hold them as long as Moses. So I'm virtually holding your hands up, guys, but we'll be right there. So thank you, Rick. future kings and priests. Amen. Don't know what third space is? Yes, so just that's that third item, that third space of belonging besides your home and your work that you can find value and community in. Raymond adds, small talk can indicate a lot about values. Luke 16:10, he who is trustworthy in what is least is also trustworthy also in much, and he who is unrighteous in what is least is unrighteous also in much. Amen. So we can't just talk the big talk, we also have to talk the small talk in a trustworthy and righteous way. Yes, the men were able-bodied, they were prepared. Yitro had obviously seen that, right? Seen that there was some potential and maybe needed to push Moshe in that direction to listen to him. Raymond says you need a top-down structure in order for the lowly and humble but qualified to be lifted up from on high. Amen. Exactly, like parenting, right? No, third space is a different context. That's more about like the David and Amy, the kind of the law of 33%. Third space is actually a physical space, meaning like I spend most of my day, say, at work and then home, but what is that another element that can provide connection and belonging and value? And I use that to talk about the importance of the small talk and just the getting to know one another that can actually prevent the critical, because just in getting to know one another in quote informal environments actually can provide the fabric to share one another's burdens and prevent critical situations that actually don't need to be then passed up to be given a right ruling. Okay, I see a question for chapter 20. Okay, so 19, we're there. Again, I'll say it again just for a more exhaustive look into...
Mine in 19:7, Moshe called on the elders of Israel. So he didn't go to all the people. He went to the leaders of the group of people, and most likely they went to the people whom they were headed up over. So here we see leadership in place before Yahweh appeared on the mountain. So that's pretty interesting to me. So I know how Rabbi touts on leadership and a structure should be in place. And so this was before Yahweh came and freaked everybody out and they said, stop, we only want one. So how is that? To me, that's amazing that this was beforehand, and now and then Yahweh comes and then people say they don't, stop, it's too intense for us, that we only want the one. So I don't know how this, for me it's very important that we need to learn how to wait on leadership, even though we might not agree. Now I'm not saying I don't, I'm just saying even though we don't agree, there's so many different aspects we can't see that they may be privy to. So it's just learning our patience for the time to come, and when the time's right, then that move will be made through us or from them to us. I don't know if I said that right, but anyway, I just wanted to.
Thank you, Steve. And yeah, I think a great summation and example in real time of the implementation of the delegation.
Okay, I think actually my question / comment is coming from something that Raymond mentioned, and it had to do with Moshe, not Moshe, Moshe and Yitro, but and Moshe asking the name, or so kind of what I got out of it was that Moshe was asking what Yah's name was to verify who he was talking to, because he, at this point in time, he had left Egypt. So if from what Raymond was saying, his mother would have taught him about Yah, but having still been a prince of Egypt, when he would have been away from her during those years of his being educated by the palace, or, however you want to say it, Mitzrayim, that he would have learned about all of their different multi-demigods kind of the same way, and I imagine he knew about Yah kind of the same way our children know about him, but the school system is kind of like pushing evolution versus creation. So that was kind of the thought that came to mind after Raymond gave his very wonderful explanation of, of that. And I guess it also kind of, I don't know, I was thinking that maybe Yitro, okay, maybe he wasn't pagan, but still he knew about Yah, but I guess I really have never gotten the understanding or the correlation of where he was in all this, other than being Moshe's father-in-law.
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, and I think what you're hinting at, and we'll definitely dive into here in chapter 19, is relationship. That even if we might know of, or Moses had known of, and of course through Raymond's insight providing his foundation through his mother, but that when you get into that relationship, it concretes it way more, as we know, than just information, than just reading in a book. Just scroll up to answer some questions. Chris Stewart asked about, this is chapter 18, sorry, but right ruling, the Torah had not been given yet. Verse 26 talks about the rulers ruling the people correctly. This is a sequencing events issue since 1905 has not happened yet. I would say no, and I think many would agree, just in the fact that the ways of Yah were in place, and we can see this throughout the scripture, from Noah with the clean and unclean animals. We have even Cain and Abel. We have many examples of the Torah coming before that. So not a sequencing event issues, but the right ruling on these judgments being of the ways that Moses knew the word of Yah before it was specifically given in this covenant form on Sinai. We have from verse 22, Harry and Betty Olson says, let the priests who come near Yahweh, this is in chapter 19, who are the priests in this section, since the Levitical priesthood hadn't been established yet. Anyone want to answer that? I have a note, but I'd like to give somebody else a chance. This is verse 22 in chapter 19 about the Levitical priesthood. It's referring to the Kohanim. Bar Melchizedek. Meaning the righteous king, referring to that priesthood. Scroll up. Copy a couple of questions. Anyone else comment on 22? Okay, well, in the meantime, Sam Davidson, why must anyone who touches the mountain die? Verse 12, I think this is a setting of boundaries. And we can see here also David and Amy coming near the mountain like the Holy of Holies. We also had the Hoffman family. Yahweh required special preparedness to meet with him. Good question from MTOI. How should we best present ourselves to Yahweh when we meet with him on the Sabbath on the holy days? Amen. So I think it's all related. There's protocol, there's respect, there's boundaries, there's preparation, all of that related. I mean, okay, right? We've all been to various work functions, parties, prom, maybe, but there's this thing called a dress code, right? And you don't wear that dress code, you might not be let in. I wonder where dress code comes from. Sounds like a wedding garment, not being prepared. So I think this is related to that as well, as we have to be cognizant of what the dress code is in our various acts of worship and dedication in our faith. Thank you, Hoffmans, for illuminating that. How can we best prepare it? And this is an example of that. What is the dress code here in our garments? Okay, go back to the Kohanim question. See, Levites, they served as judges. Raymond, go ahead.
All right, so I was just getting my hand in the queue there for if the Kohanim thing doesn't get covered. There's not really a lot of traffic on that. It is a very, very good question. So I'll just go ahead and remind us that, the question was that since the Levitical priesthood hadn't been established yet, therefore, who are these Kohanim in verse 22? That's a really good question because a lot of us are so used to the idea of equating Levitical with priesthood, etc., that it doesn't sometimes register that was a special thing that was introduced for a special circumstance. And that special circumstance was the incident with the golden calf. Before the incident with the golden calf, the tribe of Levi did not have really any special rank, and in fact they were still actually in disgrace from the actions of their progenitor. Levi did dishonor himself at Shechem. So what we have going on here is before the incident with the golden calf, Kohanim were from every tribe and from every family. It was handed down from firstborn to firstborn. And this is the old order of things. This is the order of things that is sometimes referred to when we talk about the order of Melchizedek. Okay, and this is something that our Nasi has spent a good deal of time on here and there, scattered throughout the various recordings that are offered. Okay, but it is the original order of priesthood in the human realm. And it is also therefore when you have the reset, the covenantal reset with Yeshua, that is why in this particular covenantal situation, we have that priesthood solution instead of a Levitical one. And so hopefully that's a very, very basic treatment of it, but hopefully it is enough to answer the question and get some wheels turning.
Amen. Thank you, Raymond. Also, Kohanim referencing firstborn, also in terms of that context as well. So, yes, as Raymond stated. Okay, a couple questions about names. I don't know. Not going to focus on that right now. We have, the kingdom of priests, also translation kingdom of princes as well, also can relate, as the previous studies on this as well go into the discussion of the Melchizedek priesthood, the role of discipling and teaching Torah that has existed throughout, way before the Levitical coming into place for their specific services. Okay, so we had a Hoffman family ask about before about bringing the name to naught. And Rabbi Tom answered about bringing basically anything disgrace or shame to Yahweh's name. So bringing it to naught, bringing it into vain, basically for no reason, right? To disgrace it, to bring it low, to not uphold it, to lift it up, to make it empty. Okay, Let me see. Some other questions. Now, Crystal, in terms of verses 12 and 22, says Moses was told to build a border and keep everyone away from their own safety. Then in 22, he was told to let them come near. Moshe replies that he was told not to do that, which is obviously the right answer. It's a good showing of a test. Yahweh doesn't change, and Moshe knew when he says something, he means it, and to follow his instructions no matter what else is said. Hope what I'm trying to convey makes some sense. I think that could be a reading of that, a test as well. And also, I was reading it as well, kind of a study that, before you kind of don't want someone to do something, you might warn them, like way before, and then warn them right before they're going to do it. So it could also be an iteration of that as well as, okay, I know I already told you this, and I know you already did this because, well, this is the creator we're talking about, but go again to reinforce this protocol. But I like that as well, Crystal, the showing of a test and, in this ultimate preparation, like we said, kind of that protocol and dress code. Okay, so we're almost done. I just wanted to bring something here in chapter 19. I know we didn't even really cover the 10 words, but that's what happens in Torah study. We have 2 hours, really an hour. But I'd like to bring something here that we can cover chapter 20, maybe go a couple extra minutes. Just this idea of relationship, not just obedience. Right? The relationship, the obedience is an outcome of that relationship. We can see this in the very first commandment, the very first word, right? It says, I am, right? To identify, to show this is who you're dealing with. This is who you are marrying. I read a commentary basically like, imagine a king coming to a new land, and the king's advisor says, well, make your orders, king. And the king, hesitant, saying, well, if they don't know who I am, though, if they don't respect my sovereignty, they don't know who I am, how are they going to do and respect what I'm going to tell them? And so this aspect of relationship then leading to that obedience, right? So I have a quote here. It says from the commentary from Rambam, therefore the first commandment concerns not action but apprehensions. It addresses our internal sensibility, not our external behavior. It asks for obedience, not for obedience, just for obedience, of course, but for relationship. And relationship is the foundation of Torah, right? When we know our Father, when we know our Messiah, when we know each other, the actions will come as a fruit of that, an outflow of that. It is the foundation, this relationship. With anything, your relationship with your work, the relationship with, it could be your diet, the relationship with everything is the foundation of that. How you relate to it, right? Think about that. How you relate to something will then lead to what you do with it. And so I just want to put here the Hebrew wedding picture in this idea of relationship, right? Because the marriage covenant is the ultimate type and shadow of the relationship, and ultimately the marriage that we are wanting to be a part of the Ketubah covenant of Sinai right here, and also the beautiful imagery of the idea of, in the Hebrew wedding picture, the groom paying the price, okay, for the bride. Keep that in mind for Yeshua. The bridal chamber prepared. Okay, we know that our master is preparing a room. The father choosing the date for the marriage. Okay, Yeshua himself says, I don't know the date. That is the Father's hands. The Father is choosing the date. So we see in this, honestly, the most beautiful love story ever between the Creator and his people. And the word Brit, we see here in covenant, receiving this covenant. In verse 5, we know, right, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, it can be literally translated, Brit. I'll put it here, as circle, chain, or even ring. And so we have the formal proposal in verse 5. Now, therefore, if you obey my voice, you shall be a special treasure. And the word treasure there means segula in Hebrew, denotes an exclusive possession to which no one else except its owner is entitled, and which has no relationship to anyone except its owner. Okay? So you have the formal proposal, then you have the bride answer to the proposal. Okay, in verse 8. Now I just want to ask this here. What does a man and a woman say at a wedding in our contemporary times? They say, do you take this person? I do. And now let's read verse 8. And all that Yahweh has spoken, we shall do. It is the I do of the people of Israel. Then the preparation for the special day in verse 10, which the Hoffman family mentioned, right? Go to the people and set them apart today and tomorrow, and they shall wash their garments. Then the groom comes down and stands beneath the chuppah. This is verse 16. The voice of the shofar, thunders and lightning, the thick cloud. The groom then presents the wedding proposal through the friend of the bridegroom, Moshe, in verse 17. Moshe brings the people out to meet with Elohim, and they stood. Shofar blast, and we can see a connection to, of course, Yom Teruah, will announce the special day, in verse 19. And then finally, the marriage contract itself, the ketubah, I'll put this here, is given to the bride. All the conditions of the marriage covenant, these are the 10 words. And this is chapter 20. These are the conditions. This is the ketubah. And we see the proposal, the answer, the preparation in a wedding. The Brit, the covenant. And this is the relationship that we are entering into. This is the I do that we are entering into here on Sinai, that of course lasts until the day we are in today. Mark Oswald adds in 19:4, you have seen, he is a reference of the relationship and the reason the people should agree to obey his voice. Amen. You have seen, you know me. Hoffman's add, beautiful, we obey out of the love, fear, appreciation, admiration, thanksgiving, adoration, dependence to the great El and our awesome Elohim. Amen. The bride has made herself ready, exactly. Rick Berry adds, where is the salt? Amen, the salt covenant. We know also in the custom of exchanging the salt, that your salt could not be determined to be different from the one that you were marrying. We know that we are to be the salt of the earth, so we definitely imagery there. Did the washing mikvah beforehand get mentioned? Raymond, that's a very critical aspect of ancient Hebrew Jewish marriage, alive and well today. No, not specifically. Or also, are we referring to the, where is it, 14 and 15 verses? Or just in generally speaking, the mikvah and the becoming clean, and ceremonial clean. The ketubah verses, well, this would be all of chapter 20, would be the ketubah, would be the conditions of the covenant. The 10 words, also known as the 10 commandments. Yes, verses 14, yes, beautifully symbolic, right. Set the people apart, they wash their garments. We also know that we are to wash our garments with the word, and to prepare our wedding garments. And so, before we can dive in, of course, to chapter 20, and we can go on for days and hours for that, that we look at it with the ketubah, the conditions, the beauty of this, and that our obedience to the word, which is unquestionable, is a product, is an outcome of our relationship. As we love, we do. As we get to know, we do. The covenant written on our hearts in love. So we're already past 8 o'clock here, 10 o'clock Eastern, and other hours over the world. I hope this was a blessing to you, and I hope some sort of daily bread was put in our baskets to eat and break together. as we break bread virtually. Praise Yah, I really was looking at it yesterday, and beautiful, beautiful imagery. The fact that literally in verse 8 they say, I do, can choke me up. Raymond adds, glad we could draw attention to verse 14 here, talking about marriage and covenant. Immersion before entering the covenant is right here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. There's some really weird stuff out there. Amen. Yeah, I know Raymond talks about this often and agree completely to not undermine the importance of the mikvah and the immersion before the covenant. So yeah, we will close here. Of course, we have to close in prayer. We don't have to, but we choose to, especially after a study like this. Thank you to everyone for your commentary and for taking the time out, to have a kind of a date night with us here. And so I'll ask one of the men to raise their hand to close us in prayer as we go back to our evenings with our families and develop these relationships and our small talks and our big talks and everything in between.
Father in heaven, we just come before you this evening at the close of the study. Just want to thank you, Father, for being the creator, for giving us life, Father, and the hope of eternal life, Father. Just want to thank you for the Torah. Thank you for being able to learn your word today and just help us to keep it and to do it, Father, and obey you. And thank you for the love that you show us. Just ask you to be with us throughout the rest of the week, and we just give you thanks for all these things. In your Son's name, Yeshua. Amen, we pray.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you to everybody. Just reading here. All your comments, your questions, contributions, the readers, the listeners. Greg and Mary add, whatever the depth of relationship, the intent is to put forth our utmost. Amen. Bring the wine next time. Okay, AJ? Can't joke about that in a room full of Israelites. You're on wine duty. Rick's on salt duty, apparently. Okay. Great study, Annette. Well, welcome. Prayers again for everybody and for the interviews and opportunities this week and for sharing. Amen. We'll start the countdown. We'll do a 10, a 9, 8 rapid fire. Oh, that's 2 9s. I meant 9.5. And then this is the verse I had in mind about the washing of the word, and I think it connects it well. That's Ephesians 5:25 to 27. Husbands, love your wives as Messiah also did love the assembly and gave himself for it in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, in order to present it to himself a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or any of the sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless. Amen. So wish you all a wonderful, blessed rest of the evening. Go ahead, go back to your loved ones and love them. Pour our heart out together in Messiah. Shalom, shalom. Blessings to all. See you all, God willing, on the live stream on Shabbat. Stay strong in our Master. Shavua Tov.